We've dropped into Kigass Aero Components in Warwick. Now, first of all, Peter, a bit of background on the company, because it's a great, great story.
Yes, well, good morning, Colin. Thank you for coming to see us this morning. Kigass Aero, we started in the 20s with the great-grandfather of the current owner. We're 4 generations in now, private business. We got into the aerospace business in the sort of late 30s, and we've been developing the business in the aerospace ever since. And we've also got a part of the business that is currently in Autosport, which we've been doing now for around 22 years in Autosport.
Now, a great little story about how you got into aerospace, so could you just tell us about that briefly?
Yes, well, the business started as a company called Kigass, and the great-grandfather set up making paraffin primers for stripping paint, and the cone shape at the start of at the end of the nozzle was something that Rolls-Royce required, and they came to the great-grandfather of the current owner to say, well, how do you achieve that? And he said, well, I'm not going to tell you how you achieve it, but we're happy to make it for you. And that's how we got into the aerospace business.
Obviously very successful, because you've been going almost 100 years now, so fantastic. But what I want to do is, what sort of processes do you actually do? Right from the beginning, sort of CAD/CAM all the way through to final assembly, or just if you could give us a brief insight to that, please?
Yeah, well, in terms of the aerospace business, in general terms, we are a subcontract supplier, so it will be finished drawings coming from customer, which we will quote for and win business as a subcontractor. In the autosport industry, it's slightly different in terms of they work off CAD models, solid CAD models. We work with their engineering team here such that we can be advising on some of the forms that they try to achieve, because cost is also an issue in both autosports, it is in any business, and we do concurrent engineering with them, and we'll work with them on the CAD systems, advising on radii and other forms where they have put something in that's maybe going to be a little bit too expensive in a long manufacturing process, and we can work together on the cost of manufacture, which is key.
So ultimately adding value on that initial stage of the process.
Indeed we do, yes. And then obviously it goes through then into the manufacturing processes where we can, both in aerospace and in autosport. Obviously everybody would like one-hit machining, so you got one setup. The lowest cost that you can achieve is by doing that single setup. Where we do. There are certain components that you have to do, obviously more than one setup. But we try to advise the customer where we can to keep costs in a competitive area.
Now, you mentioned aerospace. What sort of accreditations have you got, just briefly?
Well, we have, for the aerospace industry, our AS 9100. Because we have some non-standard machining processes such as EDM, then we have to have NADCAP approvals as well. So we have AS 9100 and NADCAP approvals for specialist non-machining processes.
And approvals with Rolls-Royce and Kawasaki as examples as well?
Yes, we have a number of customer author approvals, which is, as you say, Rolls-Royce, Kawasaki, and a whole range of companies who supply into the aerospace industry, because we are first-tier supplier to Rolls-Royce, and we are also then second, third-tier supplier, supplying some of our competitors and other companies who need some of our specialist processes in the aerospace and the autosport industries.
So you've mentioned the different processes you do just briefly, but EDM, what type of EDM do you do?
We have 2 EDM processes. We have die-sink EDM and we have wire EDM, both useful in their different forms for various components.
Then next, moving on in terms of the actual other types of machining, what do you do?
So we do CNC turning, which is from 1mm up to 950mm in diameter.
You say that one with a smile, because that's your new Huachon machine, is that right?
It is indeed, yes. It's a newest machine into the business in terms of the 950mm diameter component manufacturing. We needed that strategically. It was right for the good of the business in terms of the contract we've just taken on. But we'll talk later about the fact that there is some capacity available in there. So
you said the turn in there, so fixed head, sliding head?
No, we don't have any sliding head. We do 2 axis through to 7 axis in terms of the CNC turning with a twin spindle, twin turret machine. Then we have milling, which is from 3 axis up to 5 axis, which is a 3+2 in terms of the general milling, but then we have some 5 axis machining centres, some large 120 tool change machining centres.
So that's the Matsura MAM?
Yes, we have 2 Matsuras, which we big 120 tool change units with 36 pallets feeding them. And we also have a Kitamura 5-axis machining centre as well, which also has a 100 tool changer facility with it. The 36 pallets are to give us flexibility, particularly in the autosport industry, where we're again doing fairly small batch runs from F1 through all of the race series, British Touring Car, World Rally Championships, things of that nature. To give us the flexibility that the pallets are there in the machine, so we can get products loaded up to go into the machine, and we can be running an operation on one particular product, and then that comes out, the next product goes in, and we run an entirely different product. So it's to give us the flexibility to run the machine continuously on different products, as opposed to loading the pallets up with one product and then running for a period of time on one product.
So ultimately keeping that efficiency up. But what I want to do as well is cover your autosport. You mentioned brake calipers, but it's not just machining from solid billet. There's different ways you can do it.
Yes, there are. Depending on the race series that we are supplying to, it can be from billet, it can be from, which is an aluminium billet, it can be from an aluminium extrusion, or it could be from forgings, or it could be from castings. And that's really for the customer to determine in terms of total cost of manufacture and the batch sizes they're running. But we can produce from any of those forms in raw material terms.
But Kigass wouldn't necessarily be known in the autosport industry, is that right? You're supplying to people who are then going out around the world, I understand.
Yes, indeed, yes. We don't supply to any of the teams direct. Our customers are, we're a second-tier supplier into the autosport industry, so we are supplying to key customers who are then supplying the autosport teams.
Okay, so we've done sort of your milling, your turning, EDM. What other processes do you do?
We have grinding, which is both manual and CNC grinding. Because we're in the aerospace industry, NDT is a prerequisite, so we have both magnetic dye particle and also fluorescent dye particle NDT, which is also NADCAP approved for the aerospace industry. And then we do quite a lot of assemblies particularly for the aerospace industry, which we machine all of the components, and in some instances we buy in components from other suppliers, and then we will do an assembly of those, which we then supply as a finished assembly into the aerospace industry.
Okay, and also saw earlier you're doing testing in terms of injectors and things like that as well?
Yes, well, because our history was coming from this paraffin burner, and it was that shape of that nozzle flow that they were getting, and the shape of the flame that were coming out of the paraffin burner in the early days, so we got into the aerospace industry. We've always been in that side of the business, so we have flow testing for both fuel, for oil and for air. And water as well, some water flow items. And it is really a bit of a specialist area of the business. A lot of the manufacturing we're dealing with hard metals because they are in the hot parts of the engine. So we're doing fuel manifolds, putting fuel into engines, oil working at high temperatures in some of the gearboxes within the aerospace industry. So we do a lot of work with incanals, titaniums, jet heats. So the harder type of things, some things that some people don't really like getting their teeth into, but we at Kigass can.
Okay. And I mean, just looking at components and things like that, you mentioned the aerospace, you're doing washers and nuts and things like that, but I'm thinking washers and nuts, tiny components, but you're working on some big parts.
We are indeed. Yes, a nut, as people would think about it, that they put onto a bolt at home, then we don't go down to that size. Our smallest diameter nut is probably around 15 millimeters diameter, but the largest nut we currently do is 620 millimeters diameter, so we are talking fairly big nuts.
Okay. And again, going back to aerospace, parts of manufacturing, they're critical components because holding the engines and things like that, is that right?
Yes, they are. We have approvals from the aerospace industry for actually manufacturing critical parts, which not all suppliers have got, so we can do critical parts, sensitive parts, as well as the general parts of the aerospace industry, which requires another level of approval from our customer.
Excellent. I think pretty much we've covered most of it there, so a bit of history, all the different processes you do, so EDM milling, turning and going through this quickly, NDT, assembly, your testing of the flow rates and things like that?
Fuel testing and flow testing and calibration of fuel nozzles, yes.
Anything else I've missed?
No, I think you've probably covered all of it in terms of the machining capabilities that we have. But obviously we talked about the engineering, and we do have the CAD-CAM system in engineering, so that's an alpha cam system, and we can work with our customers on that. So provided they can provide us solid models, then we can do the offline programming of the machines up in the engineering area and then come down to the shop floor. We keep the shop floor really for manufacturing, and anything we can do offline such that the guys who are running the machines are really getting output, which is what we need as the supplier of the parts, and what the customer needs in terms of cost of manufacture. He needs people just making chips, basically, just like your Swarfen chip statement. That's where we need to be.
Okay, excellent. So it's a great insight into Kigass Aerospace, steeped in history. But I suppose if anybody sees Spitfire, they're going on holiday, they're A380, or they're watching any Autosport, think of you guys.
Indeed, yes. So if you're watching really any Autosport on the television, we will be there. We also make calipers for racing motorbikes as well. So any of the Autosport you see on television, from F1 down, then we are in it. And the people who are out looking at World Rally Championships and things of that nature, there will be Kigass parts stopping those vehicles. So yes, you can see us anywhere, and if you go to any of the air shows, when you see your A380 and your A350 and all the other, and your Spitfires, we still do refurbish your parts for Spitfires and for the Lancasters for keeping the Battle of Britain in the air. So we do it right across the range.
Peter, absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much.